Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing? Yes? Are we enjoying our first AltBev Expo here in beautiful West Palm Beach? Who all here is from Florida? Yes. And who traveled from not from around the area? Okay. I feel like we should get a prize for the most distance traveled. Southeast, raise your hand. Northeast? Yes. Out west? All right, I think Montana probably gets the win. All right. Oh, Seattle for the win. Okay, okay, ma'am. Yes, Seattle for the win. Um, all right, so my name is Jennifer Macris. I have had the pleasure of serving at the intersection of the commerce, the business side of the industry, and the advocacy and policy side. I've been in this space since it legalized here in Florida in 2016 is when we voted on it. And I've just had the privilege of really standing up our market here in Florida and then following the breadcrumbs, right, which a lot of my customers are on the East Coast. I specialize in the compliance and security of cash, actual cannabis cash at the dispensary and cultivation. So really, really niche and specialized. And I'm super excited about today's panel because we are going to be talking about not the business and the policy side, but the cultural adoption of cannabis, hemp infused alternative beverages. So something really new and exciting. During our prep call, I actually said that I was going to do the introductions of our esteemed panelists, but I don't want to do a disservice or an injustice to who they are and our experts here on the stage. So I'm going to start on the end with Peter Bassoum and let him do an intro. We'll go to Ariana and then Joey.
Okay, there we go. Hi, I'm Peter Barsoom, co-founder of 1906. We are a 10-year-old cannabis brand that's been a leader in the functional cannabis category. Um, we like to call ourselves cannabis for control freaks, where it's all about for consumers who are not just about smoking or getting high, but using it as an alternative to alcohol and pharmaceuticals. So we really pioneered the category of low dose, controlled dose products that deliver a specific effect and are fast acting. We just launched our beverage platform a couple of months ago, so we're new to the beverage space, but we're an OG brand in the cannabis space.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ariana Tokes, and from Washington, D.C. Yana is my brand, Yana Wellness, and it stands for You Are Not Alone. We started as a medical cannabis dispensary, so we own a dispensary in Washington, D.C., and then wanted to reach more consumers with our hemp nationwide drink line. So we also have that. And yeah, at our dispensary, we work with clinical psychologists and pharmacologists pharmaceutical scientists to create a medical model because there isn't a medical model of really prescribing. So we brought on clinical psychologists to help people terpene profile as well. And there's a product for everyone. So that's what I do.
My name's, excuse me, my name's Joey Elwood, career benefits consultant in the mid-market space for employers, and I help them with their health insurance plans, and now help cannabis companies in that space. But I'm also a hemp farmer in parallel. I've farmed hemp for cannabinoids the last 4 out of the 5 years with my beautiful wife in the audience. But that said, we have a cannabis brand called Appalachian Girls Cannabis that's here as well, and so happy to be here.
Thank you all. So with this panel being called the new vice, I think we should define what vice is. And with the help of Professor Google, it's a noun, right? So immoral or wicked behavior. A vice to me is a Diet Coke on the rocks once a week. But I think we should really kind of unpack vice. And when we talk about the new vice economy, it isn't about replacing X, right? Fill in your blank here. It's about redefining the experience of something. And I think the brands that will win in this space, especially on the alternative on the alternative beverage, right. Speaking of vices, Mary, yes, absolutely. On the alternative beverage space, um, different panel, Josephine. The brands that will win in this space will win based on respect of wellness, the complement of the culture, and the mastering of compliance, which also builds strong financial systems, I believe, and also sustaining some legitimacy. So before we start, we talked about defining like the new vice economy, and based on what we discussed on our panel prep call, which was amazing, by the way. We came up with the new vice economy as a translation from high risk, high proof indulgence to regulated, dose controlled, culturally integrated alternatives, where cannabis and hemp and alternative beverages redefine how adults socialize, relax, and participate in consumption. So I'm super excited to like unpack that, right, and talk about indulgences and intoxication and social tonics. And kind of talking about vices, this is really a cool icebreaker when we talk about cultural adoption. So rapid fire panel, hot coffee or coffee or tea?
Matcha.
Matcha, coffee or tea?
Dirty matcha.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
All right. Book on tape or paperback?
I'm sorry.
Book on tape or paperback?
Book on tape.
Paperback.
Audiobook.
Nice. All right, and last one, tennis or pickleball?
Oh,
Neither.
neither.
All right. That was a fun
Tennis.
one.
I'm
All
a tennis girl.
Tennis.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so simpatico. I'm a tennis girl and I have such a bias towards pickleball. All right, we can talk about that another time. All right. So again, those are people's behaviors, right? Those are cultural things that you do, and I really want to get into our questions about like the cultural shift, right? Why alternative beverages in our space? So as a society, we're becoming more aware, perhaps more mature as an industry. The consumers are seeking more intentional experiences. Would you agree? And with that enhanced clarity and function before, during, and after maybe indulging or consuming, my question to you, Joy, will start. What consumer behaviors are changing the driving force in this particular category as a cultural shift?
Well, I think folks, I mean, the easiest low-hanging fruit is no hangover, the lack of alcohol or complementing it with maybe using less. But in my profession, in my career, I've noticed that folks and the employers are looking for ways to reduce healthcare costs, and they can understand that, they can have someone take a beverage and they don't have to be on a pharmaceutical. So that's an easy transition. We're in the information age where people can easily understand how they could offset that. So folks are looking to that.
Anything else to add from the panel regarding that question?
Sure. We can go down the line. But yeah, I definitely think I wanted to start with just during COVID. I think that's when everyone kind of woke up and we were all like self-aware that we're poisoning ourselves all the time, and we wanted an alternative than just drinking at home and waking up feeling sick. So that's when I got into like what else is out there that I can be drinking instead of putting in poison in my body. And that's when I started I think plant medicine and just like a holistic lifestyle just fit so well together. So yeah, at our wellness center we do sound baths, we have Reiki. So that kind of just being grounded and present was what people wanted, I think, right after COVID, is to just actually engage more. So yeah, I definitely think there's a cultural shift.
I think you've got a number of very interesting consumer trends going on simultaneously that push and pull in different directions. One is, as we've all spoken about, the decline of alcohol consumption. The second is the rise of Ozempic use as well, which is part and parcel a contributor to the decline in alcohol consumption, or at least awareness of the impacts of obesity on kind of health. Third is we're paying way more attention to sleep than we ever have as Americans. I was of the time period working in finance in New York in the late 90s and early 2000, where sleep is what you did when you were dead. That was the whole myth or the belief. And then you also have the incredible spike in anxiety that people are having, which is turning them, we're seeing prescriptions for Xanax, antidepressants, anxiolytics, SSRIs go through the roof. So all of that is coming together, suggests that consumers, adults, are looking for other ways to feel, or are looking for ways to feel better. So they're in a search pattern right now. And for many, they have not yet found sort of the thing that works for them. And I think that's what has given rise to the proliferation of hemp beverages and as an alternative to alcohol. So the one thing also to keep in mind is that, cannabis, hemp, however way you want to call it, is finding its way in lots of other places besides just nightlife and where bars are as well. And I think that's what's making it also very interesting and not just a vice in the traditional sense of the way we think of vice, but is a vice in the sense of this is my sort of secret little indulgent or mommy's little helper, or the way in which microdosing mushrooms has become very popular among certain segments of the population. So we can think about vice in different ways than just immoral behavior as
Right.
the way Google defined it.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like there are just more options. People are becoming more aware. We're more educated. Where more options are available to us, and as we figure out what works for you, may not work the same for me. And just having the options and the freedom to, dare I use the word experiment, but indulge in those things to see how our body responds. Wellness is so important, and that is becoming the forefront. And this was kind of a segue, Peter, to my question. It is in regards to alcohol. Would you say that these infused or alternative beverages are replacing alcohol, making a new lane for alcohol, or a complement to alcohol?
I mean, in my view, it's a compliment. The there are a lot more people who are going totally sober, but really the largest population of people who are consuming hemp beverages aren't the people who are abstaining totally from alcohol. It's the people who are zebra striping. So they'll have a glass of wine and then have a hemp beverage, or the other way around, or maybe a hemp beverage during the week and alcohol on the weekend. So it's not like wine sales have gone away. And it's not like everybody's going sober, but it's more about the way in which consumption is happening is changing. And so we're very much interested in the sector of people who are using cannabis and alcohol just a little bit differently. And that's why we created our spirits bottle, which is effectively positioned as the vodka of cannabis, because it tastes like nothing, mixes with everything. So same Moscow Mule, just a better morning now.
Yeah, I'd love to expand on that a little bit. I love what you were saying. I think with cannabis, we're very much like love everybody. Everybody love everybody, right? Where we're now competitors to alcohol. Instead, I feel like alcohol manufacturers should just diversify their portfolio, add a cannabis option, give people want options. We don't just want to drink alcohol. I love an alcoholic drink, but sometimes I want a different experience. So I don't see it as a competition. It's more just like opening up the space.
When it comes to the cultural shift, we talked a lot about this the other day. Where we historically go to purchase our insert here, right? Do we go to the liquor store to get our bottle of tequila? Are we going to the dispensary to get our gummies and our flour? And then as we are talking about these alternative beverages, I think from a cultural perspective is where do we go to purchase these items? And so I think from where you're going to the store, where you feel comfortable in going, also drives that cultural shift. Right, and as we go through litigation here in the state of Florida and amongst your states, where will those items be approved and legal to sell? Right, are we going to the bodega? Are we going to a licensed and regulated location? So I think that's going to drive a lot from the cultural adaptation as well.
I would say our brand Appalachian Girls has a strategy in the blue ocean because access is an issue. So when we think about benefits and the ability to get access to this plant in Ohio and Michigan's a good state to get access. But aside from that, there's not a lot of folks in rural America that have the ability to do that. So.
And I think you hit on cultural with Appalachian Girls, right? The Appalachian Trail, the be one with the earth, and be just the whole migration of the Appalachian Trail. I feel like that there's synergy with what you do, your mission, and the clientele you're serving.
You bet. We try to speak to our people and know who they are, and we like to say, get a taste of the hills. So.
Get a taste of the hills. For me, it would be a cannabis for control freaks. I know I have control issues, and I work on it on a daily basis, so I'm here for it. Let's talk about segueing over to reputational and regulatory risk. And I think as a reputational risk, I always get concerned as a mom of a young child parking my car in the front of the dispensary. Why? Why am I bringing my own stigma into that space. So I told you all I deal with cash, right? And so I had a courier that didn't want to park his truck in the front of a strip club because what kind of reputational risk would that expose? I'm like, well, they pay the bills. They're signing a 5-year contract. Why wouldn't you stop your truck? Anyway, but when we talk about reputational and regulatory risk, um, Joey, how do hemp-derived beverages complicate compliance when it comes to the regulatory risk in a consumer?
So I wish all employers thought like cannabis employers, but throughout, depending on what state you're in, I think, or where you're at in the region, Ohio's very far behind as it relates to the education and information on the plant. But employers are leaning in. I mean, they understand things are legal and they have, employees coming to them with requests and interest in, I want to get off gabapentin and I know that this can help me and I've used this. So I think there's a lot to that, and it's a gray area. We sit at legislative conferences with Society for Human Resource Management, and they're all begging for further regulation and say, hey, we need these policies. We need recency testing so that we can, further drive the evolution of this industry.
Yeah, I wanted to speak on this just as a medical cannabis operator and dispensary owner. I think, when we started, it was we were one of the first stores, so we were kind of like the test dummies that the government was using to come up with the medical market, and people would come in with their kids, and we were just like, wait, are kids even allowed in here? So we went to the cannabis board, and we were like, are kids even allowed in here? They didn't know, so we had to come up with like a way to come up with a model for this. So we have like an intake room where in the intake room there's no product, so kids are allowed there. But I think it was just interesting, like we're at the forefront, so it's up to us to kind of like normalize it and come up with the regulations. Like I was like, wait a minute, I'm paying you tax dollars, so I can tell you a little bit of like how it should be done. So yeah, I think it's super interesting, like this topic. It's
And redefining that to normalizing it, Peter, I'll come right to you in a moment, but redefining that, and like I just shared with you, I brought my own stigma from the DARE era. How many decades was that ago, right? So we have a blank canvas. We're a new market for this, and so normalizing the conversation. I'm always referring to it as cannabis or an adult tonic or social tonic or something like cleaner and healthier. And so just normalizing that in my household is the shift. I actually want to go back to well, go ahead with what you were going to add, Peter.
No, I was just going to say, I started 1906 10 years ago. And if somebody said, Peter, 10 years from now, you're going to be down in Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and be able to walk into a liquor store and buy a cannabis beverage, I'd be like, you're fucking smoking too much shit, man. So think about how far we've come in a decade. And it's normal that the stigma is going to, I was in the Just Say No generation from Nancy Reagan. So that's normal and to be expected. What makes beverages so exciting is two things. One, you can go to a normal place to get it. Like you can bring your kid to a liquor store, right? You can see it sitting next to a bottle of Absolute, and there's something just about that environment which makes it so much more inviting and destigmatizing than a dispensary will ever be. I mean, the dispensary experiences suck. Let's just be very clear here. Generally speaking, they suck. You walk in the door, the first thing that happens is you're asked for an ID. Like, okay, I'm doing something wrong. That's just an opportunity for somebody to say, no, you can't come in here. You walk in, it's dimly lit, you can't see from the outside. So let's stop trying to proliferate dispensaries. We already have a number of mechanisms for the distribution and the taxation of 21 and up goods like cigarettes and alcohol. Stop trying to build dispensaries. Just put 21 and older products everywhere else where 21 and older products are, and that'll go a long way towards destigmatizing it. The other thing that I find fascinating is if you walk up to a general consumer or ask somebody, here, what would you like to try and fill in the blank? Would you like to try this beverage with cannabis? Would you like to try this gummy with cannabis? Would you like to try this vape with cannabis? Or would you like to try this pill with cannabis, right? I bet you 9 times out of 10, the first thing that they're willing to try is a beverage. That format, that physicality of it also has a far more makes it far more accessible to people. There's something about our oral fixations or the social drinking. So where we are today, as exciting as it is, from where we were 10 years from now, God knows what kind of predictions we'll be able to see of what the world looks like, 10 years from now. But I think it's going to be even more exciting than what we've seen the last 10 years.
Keep a pulse on that crystal ball of yours and let us know how that's going to go.
I do have to quickly just defend the dispensary model because with my dispensary, it's also a wellness center. So taking away just like the transactional, like you walk in and it's homey. It's up to us to create a better space for it. So you can come in and get therapy. You can go in another room in our wellness center and do yoga. So it's more about making it a lifestyle.
You're doing it differently
Yeah,
than most.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's
You are
up
the
to-
outlier.
You're the
and
outlier.
More people should subscribe to that because it is about the wellness. You have to take
Yeah.
it back to the medicinal properties of what this plant and what these adaptogens and what these mushrooms, these functional elements, what they were sourced to do from the jump, I should say. So the wellness and the education piece, I feel like we can all agree is the most important as we work through regulation, as we work through what's available on the shelves. Peter, I want to actually go back to where we were on the gray market because we talked a little bit about this on our prep call, and it was in regards to where is my little note here? Stand by. What regulatory gray zones currently shape the alternative beverage space?
Yeah, I think it's about the distribution and where we're finding it. People keep talking about gas station cannabis and
The 100 milligram.
yeah,
cans.
or I mean, the 100 milligram. It's the 1,000 milligram stuff that you find out there, which is a little bit scary. So, and we're seeing obviously, a backlash, precisely because of the places where these products are showing up and the kinds of products that are showing up there. So, the gray market is good in a lot of ways because it's giving people access, right? That they otherwise wouldn't have had access to. So you're not going to hear me bash sort of the gray market universally because, for some people it's a lifesaver. If they can find the right product, in those gray markets, that's great. It's gone a long way towards also normalization, destigmatization, and access, but it's also the same thing, which is inviting scrutiny from certain factions.
I 100% agree. I think I don't, I'm not shocked, I guess, that America has these opportunists going that deep on these products. It's unfortunate, but it feels like a natural evolution of our industry, and we're going to see some corrections as we go. But I look forward to winding those down, maturing it.
Maturing. So we've talked a lot about the regulatory risk. I want to speak to the reputational risk before we move on. And we talked about this when it comes to, staying with that reputational risk, how cultural icons impact cannabis culture. So we talked about like Willie and Snoop. We've talked about George Clooney and Matthew, or no, not, I changed this up. We said Matthew McConaughey on our call, but I was like, Peter, you're like Dwayne Johnson's cousin from New York, right? So, so we talk about like the influence that these, icons, these Hollywood icons or these, social icons have on the impact and where we drive the conversation. So let's talk a little bit about that. And, some have been successful, more have been less successful in this space than successful in bringing their brand and image to the industry. But let's talk about how that reputational risk drives the conversation around adult beverages, alternative beverages.
Sure, I guess I'll go. Yeah, I think when I was first starting, it was in the gray market 6 or 7 years ago, and yeah, we had to create social spaces. I started in events, just throwing events where people that like cannabis and consuming cannabis could hang out and consume the products that they like to consume. So yeah, during that, it was actually a huge struggle because we had venues that we had contracts with, and then all of a sudden they're scared. So it's like, oh, everybody's event tickets, like, that affected my brand. We had to, refund people and be like, so sorry, but we were at the forefront, and the cannabis industry is super forgiving. Everybody love everybody, so it it's definitely tough. I think like rebranding and just coming out with PR messaging, it was super important to just have that background to navigate this. But yeah, that as well as the jurisdictional laws changing. So like for Virginia, where our drink line is mainly based, is it's a 25-to-1 ratio. So 25 CBD, 1 THC. So to get a 5 milligram drink, you have to put 125 milligrams of CBD in your drink just to sell it. And I think it was important to be agile. I think cannabis helps me with the stress. But yeah, we had to just change our packaging super quickly. And yeah, that's another just thing to take something off the market and then put something back on. But yeah, I mean, consumers know we're doing our best. So yeah, just having a good messaging for it was important.
Look, we live in America. We love our celebrities, right? Our celebrities have a big impact on culture, on what we're doing. And what's interesting in the cannabis space is that celebrity brands have failed. I remember when Willie's entered the Colorado market in the flower space back in 2017. The brand failed. It did very poorly. It was only when he entered into the beverage space now that we're seeing Willie's brand do actually really well and become one of the top selling beverages. So there's a really interesting confluence of celebrity and liquid that has a big impact. And we saw it in, for instance, tequila. 30 years ago, tequila was the thing you stopped drinking after college because you had too many during college and you swore it off. Then it was, George Clooney and other celebrities that were instrumental in bringing tequila back into the mainstream and destigmatizing or mainstreaming tequila. We have yet to see a mainstream celebrity-backed cannabis brand, and we don't need, the traditional sort of stoners like Snoop Dogg or Cheech and Chong, for instance. That just falls into the same tropes that we already had. I don't think it helps the industry move forward. It'll help the industry move forward when J-Lo, instead of doing a spritz, does a cannabis spritz. That'll get a lot more attention and make it more acceptable. Or my cousin, The Rock, if he wants to partner on a cannabis beverage, give me a call, Dwayne, if you're listening.
I'll put a PSA out. But speaking about The Rock, we'll talk about tequila and his ZOA, his wellness infused drink, right? So because he has that understanding and that presence in the industry as a bodybuilder and an athlete, so people are definitely going to yield to that beverage. Or the tequila, it's a cleaner, beverage. So the influence he has in bringing attention to those particular beverage segments was interesting. The other thing with Celsius, Steve, does Celsius have the activation out there still? I saw them. Okay, so I want to call out Celsius and give them proper shout out, because they did something really well with their beverage. When Red Bull was all the other ingredients, right? Celsius had a cleaner, better product. And I'm sure most of us have tried a Celsius in our day. And, Jake Paul and some of the celebrities, and, they don't sell to anybody. They don't sponsor any organizations that are like youth related. So they have a specific market that has been uber successful. And they were probably one of the highest launching volume alternative beverages or healthier beverage options over the last decade. So they've got a great team, but I think that they also were a cause for a cultural adoption of an alternative beverage that was, again, a healthier beverage as opposed to the Red Bulls or some of the other stuff that's on the market. Did you have anything to add, Joey? Okay.
I had a quick add on that. We're also talking about functional mushrooms, right? Yeah. So the Rizzy is an alternative to Celsius, just because I didn't want that high amount of caffeine, and I think people don't realize that cannabis and mushrooms are performance drugs, are performance plants. So I think, yeah, getting people to just see that is through media. I know CBD is now allowed for college football sponsorship.
Yep.
So just putting it more in media is super important, and that's up to us to start paying these people that we believe in, that represent our brands, to do it. Yeah.
And that will represent your brand with integrity and a good brand image. So we only have a couple more minutes. So let's talk about the future of vices and the future of vice economy. Peter, when we talk about culture, what does culture mean in the context of cannabis consumption or alternative consumptions? And how does consumer demand bring that into a day-to-day cultural experience?
So I think that it's not about creating separate. I'm really against cannabis like cafes and cannabis lounges. I think they're just bad ideas all around. Doesn't do anything to further the destigmatization of it. The economic model is broken. It's a waste of resources. So just stop. And really, what we should be doing is incorporating these behaviors in the same areas that we have our regular behaviors. So it'll be a great day when I can, I had dinner last night at the Fern down the street here. It'll be a great day and they have a wonderful list of mocktails, right? When can I have actually the cucumber spritz that they had, but with 2.5 milligrams of THC, for instance? Everybody, I'm sure, has been following the news. Senoritas is in the center in Chicago. That got a lot of coverage. That's another great way. So the more we can actually incorporate cannabis into the other things that we're doing that are just normal, instead of having to change adult behavior that dramatically, then the more sort of culture benefits as well, because that means less drunk people at a football game getting angry, for instance.
I'm the baseball mom at 8 a.m. games where I'm cracking actually open a Pharaoh's most recently, and whereas the other moms might be having like a screwdriver in their tumbler. Like, you're gonna be schnockered by 10 a.m. and not there for your child, or in a good. So anyway, so it's how do you incorporate on a day-to-day functional basis? You're not showing up to work inebriated or after a screwdriver in the morning. So how can we incorporate these day-to-day new vices into a functional, responsible consumer of? I like to say I'm a responsible and functional consumer of all the things, but I also figure out what works for me and how I can be, productive in my day-to-day work life. And who doesn't love going to the gym with a little enhancement, right? I cycle so much faster. I have such a better experience on the bike. Like, I just love being in that slightly euphoric, enhanced state. It's a better experience, and I'm a better human being because of it.
And you're still and you're even more in control, arguably.
100%. 100%.
Educating your friends is just so important.
So, to speak to that, I am a trusted advisor in my professional world and in my personal world because of the work I get to do and I've been doing. People will come to me and ask about X, Y, and Z, or an adaptogen beverage, or a lion's mane, or cannabis related, because they were so fearful before. Where they'll come to me, and I love to have almost like going back to like the Tupperware model, right, Mary, or like the in your home kind of like a book club, right? Instead of like busting opening the bottles of wine, like I'm exposing them to alternatives that they can drive. There are 100% go to market, back to your family and be 100% on point. So it's lovely to get to share this messaging and these alternatives to the people. And that's where it starts, folks. Have these conversations with your family and friends. Those are the people you speak to first. Those are the influence driving conversations, and then that magnifies. So that's a really super exciting component there. And then Joey, how does vice disappear as the stigma fades, or does it?
Well, one would argue that there's a number of generations that have been ideologically captured, and they're going to maybe fade off into the sunset, and that will take some time in and of itself. I think the beverage space is a big piece of that. When you can have, my great aunt, for example, who just flew into town, does not use cannabis, and my dad's on the phone says, "Hey, Aunt Annette tried one of those drinks and she was able to sleep." This is not a cannabis user. Someone like Peter said earlier, that the platform for it, I think that's a big help to our efforts, is getting more entry point opportunities for people who have historically not wanted to deal with the smoke. I mean, gummies were a great evolution, but I think beverages widespread is a great opportunity for the stigma to go away.
Well, and like you said, Peter, people will probably start with a beverage first, right? And then what can they layer that with, or what can they add to that just to achieve that enhanced feeling that they want to? We touched on this in the beginning of our conversation, and Joey, you just brought it up, and I want to bring it full circle with regards to other options and alternatives to these statin drugs, these narcotics that people are taking. My father, 77 years old. He went to Woodstock, for God's sakes. God knows what he consumed at Woodstock, but will he consume cannabis? No, not until I said, "Dad, you can't sleep. You're on all these narcotics for your pain. Try this." And it was a CBD, maybe a CBD and like 1-to-1. And he's like, "Jen, I slept for 9 hours last night." So again, being that trusted advisor to your family and friends, but listen to your daughter. But to get him off, maybe not get him off of, but like give him another option to sustain his livelihood and feel comfortable was so rewarding.
I would add, with the president finalizing, they've directed the rescheduling, which is great. I'm all for descheduling, but the Center for Medicaid Services has now finalized rules to provide, $500 for every 65-year-old citizen for full spectrum CBD. So we're headed in a very good space as it relates to pharmacy costs and healthcare. I think I'm eager to see that roll out.
So great segue to our final question as we wrap up, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Rapid fire in like 30 seconds. Where do we see the alternative beverage space in the next 5 years?
Selfishly, it's know your farmer, right? We grow our own. People worry about where their steak or their pastured poultry comes from, but where does your THC come from? Where are you getting the ingredients in your can? Know your farmer.
That just gave me goosebumps. So true, right? Josephine, we like to know the source.
Yeah, I love that. I'll let you go first. I think the THC's hitting me. I'm a little slow right now. I'll let you go.
Yeah. I think being able to or seeing it in restaurants and bars in traditional places where alcohol is sold, because those proprietors also are going to need the revenue stream that comes from alcohol, and I think we're going to see a much bigger push from on-prem. I'm not going to predict a specific time, but from on-premise establishments to replace that revenue stream from alcohol. So they're going to be one of a big constituent in the marketplace, making hemp beverages accessible.
Accessible education. So just to kind of summarize, y'all, we talked about the cultural shift, right? So, doing things a little differently, replacing the vices that we once knew, the regulatory and reputational risks, so kind of putting those to the side, and then, what that future of this new vice economy looks like. I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to any questions. Yes, Stuart. Stuart, you're always the first question in my panels, and I love this.
Is it working? Yeah. Awesome. So to Ariana and Peter, the beverage manufacturers, do you see a possible next step as adding natural terpenes and maybe building a terpene profile like a sativa or indica with the beverages?
Good question.
So yeah, we're actually already doing that. We have a different product for different mood, different time of day. So for our old fashioned, we have like a smoky vanilla. We use terpenes for that. We use myrcene, but then we have our daytime ones. So we have a limonene in our Rizzy. We also, but it's crazy. You have to put such a little amount. I could talk about formulas all day, but yes, terpene profiling is super important. Yeah, we're doing it.
I don't want to see indica sativa on a beverage. I'll be
Right.
frank.
We don't put that on our beverage. We don't have
That's,
them.
again, first of all, those distinctions are
Yeah,
generally
those
bullshit,
words don't mean
as we
anything,
know, and it only brings you back to that. So I'd rather see, energy, focus, sleep, things that are going to make it more accessible. So we are seeing that. We're launching. We're known for our functional product line: Go, Chill, Bliss, Genius, Loves, so on and so forth. And so we're going to be introducing our Bliss beverage in a couple of weeks as a first part of our extension. People are doing it. You can walk the floor, and there's energy drinks out there that now contain cannabis. So it's happening, which is exciting.
I'm sorry. I would just add, I was remiss. She threw me the curveball with the introduction. We have 300 stores in 6 states with our Appalachian girls, and so we actually focus on the full spectrum aspect of it because we're the farmers as well. So how are you arriving at your distillate, right? So we actually have minor cannabinoids in our drinks now. So
Yeah, I just wanted to also answer your question before and tie both in. I think where I see the industry in 5 years is doing the more performance or like doing it towards a certain need, just like, every other, I think, pharmaceutical or every other just supplement. It's going to be more of a supplement, and that's where I see it going. Um, Yes. Also, FDA regulations, when you say make claims, it's very terrible, but the mental clarity, the focus, these are things you can say, and I think it going towards like a supplement kind of vibe is the way.
I dig that. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Anybody else? Hector? I didn't even know you were over there. We need some FLCAN representation up in here. Florida Cannabis Action Network, right here.
Appreciate it. A great panel. I would like to get your input on just a final thought on how to expand on this as a food product, not just as
Good call.
a mood altering or functional.
When's the last time you had an infused brownie? No,
So, my manufacturer, Pure Shenandoah, I want to give them a little shout out. They are also my partners, like in my life, my personal life. So I really know my farmer. But in terms of that, I get to see like all the products that they're in development on, and they're doing a barbecue sauce with like a company that wants to put out a barbecue sauce. So yeah, the food market as well. I definitely think you're gonna see cannabis and everything. People love it. So yeah, manufacturers. It's just R&D. So just getting that out there.
who doesn't want to be around the table and like cooking
Yeah, a
and being with
marinara
family?
sauce.
Yes,
Yeah.
mama's pasta on a Sunday.
Infused dinners are a huge thing in DC. So yeah.
Y'all have been great. Thank you so much. Oh, in the back?
Hello. With the discussion of like these vices and as we're moving over towards THC, education becomes a gigantic piece to this. You guys have been in business for a while. Can you kind of give us some examples of some of the education that you've been using out in market to help people understand these new things? And you're doing a great job, boss.
So we're legacy we have two 20-year legacy operators on our team. One of them has a master's degree in plant biology as well. He teaches at Cannabis, Hawken College in the cannabis program. We are all about education, and part of our piece with Appalachia is that this is a forgotten place and a misrepresented place in America. So we are trying to lead with education and talk about these, the wonderful benefits of this plant. We put a lot of content on Instagram. We just did a podcast with Nate on, and Josh is going to do another one because he was unpacking the endocannabinoid system yesterday.
Yeah. I'll speak
You
on
have
that
time
as
for
well.
one more, Steve?
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I did just want to add to that one real quick. We work with universities at our dispensary to do research. We have a clinical psychologist on staff, and then we have a cannabis science So the reason why I said earlier, like pharmacologist, she doesn't have a business she can go into. She studied cannabis science at University of Maryland, but there's no applied pharmaceutical like for it. So we're coming up with our own research to create a program. I do think that also the research and the education is up to us to fund it and get it out there.
So I have a question regarding kind of piggybacking on education. Part of what we do at Florida Can is people reach out to us when they've had negative impacts related to their cannabis consumption. And I'm curious, what do you do, or do you do anything to educate the consumer that a hemp-derived THC product will trigger a positive urinalysis and the impact that that might have in the workspace? Because that is one of the things that we see over and over again. Misperception that people have, I'm getting it over the counter, so it's safe. They have, an unintended accident at work. First thing they do is a drug screen for workers' comp.
So this is something where we have not seen a breathalyzer that has been litigation tested yet for the employer market. When we can figure out when someone's done something within 3 hours versus, gone are the days where you had 20. Mouth swab is 6 to 9 at this point. Has it been yeah, and so
I'm just wondering with the triggering of the urinalysis, because that's where people get sent to a drug testing lab for
it's a huge problem, especially like in a state like Ohio when they say, well, it's legal now. Well, the employers are in a zero tolerance state where they can do what at will employer. So
And that goes into the reputational and personal risk, right? Your culture. I used to be afraid of getting into a car accident because I was on company insurance, and the first thing I had to do was go take a drug test. Thank you, Mom, for pissing in a cup for me. However, God bless her. So, right, but that is a concern, right? Culturally speaking, like that was a concern I had for 10 years. And my mom is a proud supporter of me being in the cannabis industry. I will wrap because I know we're getting to time, but that's a big concern and a risk that people have. And how are the employers responding to that? Because we are at such a blank canvas with no precedents for that to map that out. So y'all have been great. Enjoy the rest of the day and tomorrow. Thank you, Steve, for an amazing experience. And we'll stay tuned for the next panel. Y'all stick around.